Tachibana Junichi and Ayatsuji Tsukasa are second-year high school students and they're dating. One day, Junichi is taken aback by the scene unfolding around him with Tsukasa. They're taking a bath together. Tsukasa, who is scrubbing Junichi's back, asks if he's enjoying it. Junichi, a bit nervous, replies that it feels very nice. He can hardly believe this happy moment is happening to him. Every now and then he glances over at Tsukasa, who's wearing just a towel. Tsukasa compliments Junichi's broad back, making him blush a little. She even says she has to stretch out her arms to scrub his back fully, then suddenly slips on some soap bubbles, causing her towel to slip off. Junichi almost turns to check on her, but Tsukasa, now trying to cover her chest, warns that she won't forgive him if he turns around. Junichi follows her instructions, though he's in front of a mirror that perfectly reflects Tsukasa's image. He looks at the reflection from her feet upward, and as he reaches her face, it suddenly morphs into his little sister, Mia. Maya's voice snaps him out of his dream with Tsukasa. Junichi opens his eyes to find Mia on top of him, telling him he'll be late for school if he doesn't get up soon, and that if he gets scolded by the teacher, it won't be her fault. Annoyed, Junichi wonders why Mia had to wake him up. Not understanding what he means, Mia yells that she won't wake him up ever again, so he can sleep for the rest of his life if he wants. On his way to school, Junichi's still a bit irritated with Mia. He was so close to seeing Tsukasa's body. Suddenly, Tsukasa appears behind him and asks if he was saying her name. She greets Junichi, and he awkwardly greets her back. As he looks at her, he recalls her body wrapped in a towel, just as it was in his dream. Tsukasa, noticing his expression, puts on an annoyed face, startling Junichi. She accuses him of looking perverted, which he denies. Then, Yayoi calls out to Tsukasa, who turns to greet her friends and joins them for a chat. Junichi and Tsukasa started dating about a month ago, since the school's anniversary celebration last Christmas. He still finds it hard to believe that someone as beautiful and smart as Tsukasa is his girlfriend. After chatting with her friends, Tsukasa's friends leave. Junichi gazes at Tsukasa and she asks what's up. Junichi says it's nothing. He's just grateful to be dating her. Tsukasa asks if he did the practice problems she gave him yesterday. He admits he was too sleepy to get to them. Tsukasa encourages him to stay determined, reminding him that finals are coming up, and then there will be college entrance exams next year. Apologizing, Junichi feels that Tsukasa is always a bit overbearing with him. This morning, the homeroom teacher of Class 2 reminds the students that their finals are approaching and also announces an important upcoming school event, the election for Student Council President. The teacher says Tsukasa will be nominated for the president position, and while he won't tell the students to vote for her just because they're classmates, he encourages them to support her. Everyone claps and Tsukasa shares that based on her experience as class president and on the anniversary celebration committee, she wants the student council to inspire everyone. She asks her classmates for their support. Her friends cheer her on, confident she'll be elected as student council president. Voting will take place next week with the candidate list posted on the school bulletin board at noon. After that, the campaign season begins. The homeroom teacher reminds the students to pay attention to the candidates and consider the choice carefully before voting. This afternoon, all the students gathered on the field, eagerly waiting for the list of student council president candidates to be posted on the bulletin board. A second-year student from Class 2 mentioned to Junichi that he must be curious about the other candidates besides Tsukasa, and indeed, Junichi was a bit intrigued. One of the popular third-year students, Haruka Morishima, joked that she should have run herself, but her friend reminded her that she'd be graduating soon. Sanakata, a first-year student and Mia's friend, said she wanted to go home right away, but Mia insisted that things were just getting started. Finally, the candidate announcement was posted on the board listing 4 contenders: Seiji Hanazono, Tsukasa Ayatsuji, Sanakata, and Noriko Kurosawa. When Junichi saw Noriko's name on the list, he glanced her way, but she quickly looked away, pretending not to notice him. Seiji's friends cheered him on, and several students were surprised to see a first-year candidate. They acknowledged Sei's boldness for stepping up. Sai overheard people talking about her, which made her feel shy, but Mia, as her close friend, kept encouraging her. Ai also chimed in, saying this was a great opportunity for Sei to overcome her shyness. Maya and Ai assured Sei that they'd support her, so Sei started to feel calmer and more confident. Meanwhile, the list of candidates for vice president was also posted on the bulletin board. At this school, the elected president has the authority to appoint their own vice president, which can influence how people vote. Junichi asked Tsukasa who she'd choose as her vice president if she won, but Tsukasa just smiled and said it was a secret. When Junichi saw the vice president candidates, he was surprised. Tsukasa had put him on her list as her choice for vice president. Shocked, he asked Tsukasa why she picked him as her candidate for vice president. Tsukasa explained that Junichi had been a great help when they worked together on the school anniversary celebration committee, so she felt he understood how she operated, which is why she chose him. Tsukasa then asked if it was a problem for him, leaving Junichi momentarily speechless. Then Kaoru Tanamachi approached Junichi, asking if he'd seen the vice president list. Confused, Junichi checked again, only to find that Noriko had also chosen him as her vice president candidate. This meant that both Tsukasa and Noriko had selected Junichi as their choice. Stei had chosen Miya as her vice president and Seiji had chosen Romi. Junichi was even more shocked by this discovery. He saw Noriko's friends cheering her on, and Noriko smiled as she asked them for their support. Kaoru commented to Junichi on Noriko's boldness, saying it was as if she'd made a public confession. Tsukasa seemed annoyed by the whole situation. Later, behind the school, Tsukasa questioned Junichi about what this was all about. Junichi admitted he had no clue and insisted that he'd never even spoken to Noriko before. Tsukasa kept staring at him intently, so he assured her he was telling the truth. Tsukasa believed him, thinking that Junichi likely didn't know Noriko personally. She then mentioned that all she had to do was win this election. Junichi, still a bit dazed, reflected on Kaoru's comment about Noriko's choice to select him as her vice president being like a public confession. Just then, Tsukasa tapped him on the head with a piece of paper, reminding him of his commitment to study with her every day so they could get into the same university. Apologizing, Junichi realized she was right. Tsukasa figured that Junichi was probably thinking that Noriko's choice was a confession of sorts, but Junichi denied it. Tsukasa's intense stare, however, made it hard for him to lie. Junichi asked Tsukasa why Noriko would even pick him as her vice president, especially since he'd only just learned her name today. Tsukasa confidently suggested that Noriko might just be trying to get under her skin, possibly because her father was a city council member with a lot of pride and Noriko likely had her sights set on Tsukasa. By choosing Junichi, Noriko may just be trying to irritate her and lower her morale. Finally, Junichi understood the situation. Tsukasa teased him, asking if he was disappointed that it wasn't a love confession. Embarrassed, Junichi said that couldn't possibly be the case. He then asked if he should decline Noriko's offer for the vice president role. Tsukasa said there was no need to do that. What mattered most now was winning the student council president election. Besides, the election committee was currently conducting a preliminary survey. Tsukasa was confident that Noriko would realize the gap between them soon enough. Tsukasa then reminded Junichi to work on the practice problems she had given him, which were all basic questions. She asked him to complete them immediately, and Junichi got right to it. After school, Junichi asked Tsukasa why she wanted to be the student council president in the first place. Tsukasa explained that it would look good on her record, which could help her get into a good university and secure a decent job in the future. The next day, the results of the initial election survey were posted on the school's announcement board. None of the students could believe the outcome. Noriko received 311 votes, Sei got 27 votes, Tsukasa received 72 votes, and Seiji had 108 votes. Tsukasa's friends couldn't believe she ranked third in this first survey. They were certain something was wrong. Tsukasa was far more well-known, and she played an important role on the committee for the school's anniversary celebration. They were convinced there must have been a mistake in the survey. Meanwhile, Noriko's friends were optimistic that Noriko would win easily, but Noriko remained humble, saying her campaign had only just begun. From a distance, Noriko watched Tsukasa, saying that their battle was only now about to start. Tsukasa returned her gaze sharply. During the break, Tsukasa was lost in thought by herself, so Junichi reminded her not to take the survey results too seriously. He pointed out that she still had time until the actual vote and just needed to turn things around before then. Tsukasa remained silent, prompting Junichi to ask if she was listening to him. Tsukasa apologized, explaining that she was deep in thought. She assured Junichi not to worry about her, as it was just a preliminary survey. She believed Noriko was using her father's influence to tamper with the results, possibly making people choose her through her father's power. Junichi was surprised Noriko would go that far. Tsukasa understood Noriko would try to defeat her no matter what, but she saw it as a temporary issue. Junichi asked if she was confident about winning. Tsukasa responded with a question, asking if he even knew who she was. Junichi smiled in relief. Just then, Yayoi arrived with friends carrying printed campaign flyers for Tsukasa. Tsukasa thanked them all, acknowledging that while her start might have been rough, she had no intention of losing and would need all their help and support. Tsukasa's friends were excited to help her distribute the flyers to students around the school. Maya and Ai too eagerly helped and supported Sai in her campaign. All the candidates and their friends were busy campaigning to win over student support. In the meantime, Junichi found himself staring as Tsukasa's skirt fluttered a bit in the breeze. This gave him an idea for a campaign poster. He even admitted that the inspiration struck when he saw Tsukasa's skirt blowing in the wind. Tsukasa was surprised that something like that could spark his imagination. Junichi explained that the current photos being used were only headshots. If Tsukasa had a captivating and memorable poster, it would definitely stand out. Tsukasa asked if he was sure, mentioning that someone had doodled on Seiji's poster. Junichi reassured her that no one would dare to mess with her poster. Tsukasa finally agreed and Junichi was thrilled to start. He began taking photos of Tsukasa, directing her poses from standing straight to tilting her body slightly and smiling at the camera. He felt like he was doing a magazine photo shoot, enjoying the process. Junichi then asked Tsukasa to sit down to add more variety, suggesting poses like lifting one knee, crossing her legs, and even removing her socks. Tsukasa looked at him with a less than pleased expression, causing Junichi to drop his camera in shock. The next day, the bulletin board displayed the results of the second survey for the Student Council President election. This time, Tsukasa placed second, while Noriko still held first. Tsukasa's friends were excited about the improvement, as she was now close to the top rank. They were convinced it was thanks to the new posters. Tsukasa, however, doubted that the posters alone were responsible and instead credited her friends' support, saying that she couldn't have made it this far without their help. With only a little time left before voting, she asked them to keep supporting her until the very end. Meanwhile, Junichi quietly asked Tsukasa why she thought she had gained so many votes. Tsukasa suspected that most of the votes Seiji had been gathering from the girls had likely shifted to her, mentioning that some girls had started avoiding him after he accidentally dropped the porn magazine in the school hallway. She made sure Junichi understood not to do anything foolish, as it could affect her vote count. Noriko, however, was annoyed by Tsukasa's rising popularity and together with her friends began plotting a way to secure her lead. Fearing that Tsukasa might overtake her, they decided to put their final plan into motion. One of Noriko's friends approached Junichi, telling him that Noriko wanted to speak with him. Junichi followed, led by Noriko's friend to meet her. Meanwhile, two of Noriko's other friends made sure to pass by Tsukasa and gossip about how Noriko planned to confess her feelings to Junichi behind the school. Hearing this, Tsukasa decided to head to the back of the school as well. Junichi walked over to where Noriko was waiting. She thanked him for coming, apologized for calling him over, and for listing his name as her potential vice president without discussing it first. Noriko added that this might be her last chance. Aware that Junichi was dating Tsukasa, she confessed she just couldn't give up on him. As Tsukasa made her way to the back of the school, two of Noriko's friends who were watching her from above gave a signal to another friend hiding behind a tree. This friend used a mirror to reflect light toward Noriko, letting her know Tsukasa was near. Seeing the flash, Noriko suddenly hugged Junichi, just as he was in the middle of his polite rejection. Noriko begged him not to say anything, holding onto him tightly enough that Junichi could feel her chest pressed against him. She insisted that he understand her feelings and moved her face closer to his, nearly pressing her lips to his, just as Tsukasa arrived and witnessed the whole scene in shock. Tsukasa saw Noriko hugging Junichi, and Junichi was shocked when he turned around and found Tsukasa standing behind him. Junichi immediately said that it wasn't what Tsukasa thought, and he quickly pulled Noriko's hands off his body. Tsukasa grabbed Junichi's tie and pulled him away. Noriko shouted that Junichi wasn't at fault, but Tsukasa looked at her angrily and left without a word. Noriko felt pleased, knowing she'd managed to make Tsukasa angry. Tsukasa took Junichi to a storage room. She got closer to him, making Junichi nervous as he thought Tsukasa was mad at him. But instead, Tsukasa pulled his tie and forcefully kissed him on the lips, then calmly straightened his tie. She asked if Junichi felt calmer now. Junichi replied that if Tsukasa kissed him once more, he'd feel even calmer. Tsukasa gave him a playful flick, telling him not to get carried away. Junichi apologized. Tsukasa explained that she wasn't mad because Junichi almost kissed Noriko, but because he'd fallen so easily into Noriko and her friend's trap. Junichi was surprised to hear this. Tsukasa went on to say that Noriko and her friends probably told Junichi that Noriko had something to say to him, and he just followed them without question. Then Noriko confessed her feelings to Junichi, and when he turned her down, she tried to hug and kiss him. Junichi asked if Tsukasa had seen it happen. She hadn't, but she knew their tricks well enough. Tsukasa was frustrated that Junichi hadn't noticed the trap. Junichi asked why they would set him up like that. Tsukasa explained that it was just like when Noriko wrote down Junichi's name as her candidate for vice president. This was just another way of trying to mess things up, only now it was more direct. Junichi realized that Noriko was doing all this to try to win the election for student council president. He hadn't thought she would go so far to win, but Tsukasa was sure that Noriko was determined to defeat her by any means necessary. The most important thing Tsukasa stressed was for Junichi not to fall into her traps again. Junichi nodded in understanding and promised to be careful. However, Tsukasa still didn't fully trust him, so she wanted him to swear. Tsukasa asked Junichi to promise not to kiss any other girl besides her. Junichi swore that he only loved Tsukasa and wouldn't kiss anyone else, adding that he'd be thrilled if she kissed him once more. But Tsukasa refused to give him another kiss, feeling that one kiss should be enough. The next morning, Junichi was still sleepy on his way to school when Ryoko Sakurai greeted him. Junichi commented on Ryoko's energy so early in the morning, and Ryoko asked if Junichi was feeling a bit worn out. Junichi said he wasn't, but Ryoko suddenly remembered that today was the campaign speech for the student council president election, and that Junichi was chosen as a candidate for vice president by both presidential candidates. Ryoko assumed Junichi had been up all night wondering who would win. No matter who won, Noriko or Tsukasa, Junichi would still end up as vice president. Ryoko then teased him, asking if he'd raise the tea club's budget if he became vice president. Junichi asked why the budget needed to be raised. Ryoko smiled and told him to think of it as the tea club's sudden stroke of luck. Junichi replied that it wouldn't happen, pointing out that it would be more important to focus on getting new members for the tea club. If no one joined next year, Ryoko would be the only one left in the club. Ryoko understood and admitted she was trying to figure that out too. Junichi then asked why she was so focused on increasing the budget. Ryoko reasoned that they would need extra funds to recruit members, suggesting they buy snacks for recruiting events, snacks for lunch breaks, and a stash of snacks just in case. Junichi was puzzled as to why everything seemed to revolve around snacks. Meanwhile, Yayoi and some other friends brought a sash for Tsukasa to wear during the campaign, decorated with messages of support from everyone in their class. This was actually Junichi's idea. Yayoi asked if Tsukasa liked the sash. Tsukasa was thrilled and thanked her friends, saying it would give her the strength she needed. The election committee announced that speeches from the student council president candidates would begin shortly and asked all first and second year students to gather in the gym. Haruka, a popular third-year student, once again mentioned that she should have run for the position. Her friend, tired of hearing this, reminded her of something. Haruka already knew what her friend would say, that she'd be graduating soon. Haruka seemed thrilled by the excitement of the election. Her friend understood that Haruka likely just wanted to join in on the fun and commented on what would happen if she ran and actually got elected. Haruka casually responded that she would just hand over the position to anyone who wanted it or could even come back from college to handle it. Meanwhile, two third-year members of the tea club were discussing that if they'd put Ryoko forward as a candidate and she won, it could really boost the club's budget, membership, and popularity. However, they agreed that Ryoko wasn't the right fit for a student council president. It wasn't something they could force, and besides, Ryoko was a beloved mascot of the tea club. Suddenly, over in the gym, Ryoko sneezed, a sign, as per Japanese tradition, that someone was talking about her. The first speech came from Sae, who began nervously. She introduced herself, but her speech was filled with stammers, and she nearly froze from embarrassment. Then Mia called out to cheer her on, and the whole room burst into laughter. Sae was grateful to Mia and continued her speech, eventually earning applause from everyone. Backstage, Junichi commented on the positive reactions Sae received. However, Tsukasa pointed out that a positive reaction alone didn't guarantee more votes. With Sae's speech over, it was now Tsukasa's turn. Just as Junichi reminded her, Tsukasa suddenly hugged him from behind. Junichi encouraged her, and Tsukasa began her speech with confidence, delivering it in a way that captivated the entire audience. After her, Noriko gave her speech, followed by Seiji. Finally, it was time for the voting, and afterward, everyone waited outside in the schoolyard for the final results. Sae was being cheered on by her two close friends, and Tsukasa's friends couldn't contain their excitement as they waited for the outcome. Junichi felt tense, but Tsukasa reassured him, saying there was no need to worry, and then held his hand, telling him that no matter the result, they'd worked hard together. Everyone's attention turned to the committee members arriving with the vote tally. They posted the results on the announcement board, and all the students eagerly gathered around. Tsukasa's friends were the first to congratulate her, as she had been elected as the student council president. They were thrilled and expressed their congratulations. Tsukasa thanked them, saying she couldn't have done it without their support. Yaoi mentioned that Tsukasa's hard work had paid off. Masayoshi also congratulated Junichi, who was now officially the vice president, commenting that it suited him as a recognized young man. Kaoru remarked that it was actually Tsukasa who had won and Junichi had only been chosen by her. But Masayoshi insisted that it was one of the reasons he admired Junichi. Kaoru then jokingly referred to Masayoshi as Junichi's minion, making everyone laugh. Junichi still couldn't believe that Tsukasa had won by such a wide margin. Tsukasa had already anticipated the result, saying that with a speech like hers, anyone would support her. Even Keiko had been so moved that she teared up during Tsukasa's speech. Masayoshi called it a legendary speech. Tsukasa thought her friends were praising her too much. Masayoshi assured her that with such a large margin, her leadership for the next year was secure. However, Tsukasa wasn't entirely convinced, saying she would work hard to ensure her position was secure, and Masayoshi believed that she absolutely would. Mia, Sei, and Ai went to a karaoke spot. Mia proposed a toast, but Ai pointed out that it didn't seem right since they lost the student council president election. Mia, however, argued that wasn't true. From the beginning, their goal in nominating Sei for the position was to help her overcome her shyness, and Sei had put in her best effort all the way through the election process. That alone, Mia said, was enough reason to celebrate. Ai agreed with Mia's point and they toasted. Mia then set out a new goal for Sei. She should aim to lead the school's anniversary planning committee, run for student council president again next year, and keep going as committee chair and president every following year. Sei was stunned while Ai laughed, saying that was a bit too much. Mia, unfazed, encouraged Sei to go all out with her support. She then cheered them up by suggesting they sing to their heart's content to lift their spirits. Meanwhile, Noriko's friends tried to comfort her, telling her not to dwell on the election results too much. They assured her that she'd just been a bit unlucky this time. Noriko laughed it off, saying that although she didn't win this time, she'd definitely succeed next time. She then dramatically shouted out the window that she'd use any means necessary to win Junichi over from Tsukasa. The students outside were startled by her bold declaration. The next day, Tsukasa and Junichi were heading home together. Junichi congratulated Tsukasa and she thanked him warmly. She could tell that he was exhausted, so she suggested they skip studying for the day as a reward. Junichi was pleased, though he teased her about the small reward. Tsukasa laughed, warning him that she'd make sure he worked extra hard the following day, and she would be even stricter than usual. Junichi protested, but Tsukasa firmly decided there would be no changes to her plan. Suddenly, a dog came running toward them. Startled, Junichi thought he should protect Tsukasa as both her boyfriend and her vice president. In an attempt to distract the dog, he tossed his bag to get its attention, which worked. The dog started chasing him instead. Tsukasa, bewildered, asked him what he was doing, but Junichi just kept running, calling back that he was leading the dog away and urging her to escape. Unfortunately, he didn't watch where he was going, slipped and fell into a river, while the dog simply ran off. Now soaked, Junichi found himself later warming up in Tsukasa's bathroom. On their way home, Tsukasa noticed how soaked he was and worried he might catch a cold. She invited him to her house to dry off. Junichi, a bit flustered, was taken aback by her invitation. Tsukasa noticed and asked if he didn't want to come over. Junichi clarified that it wasn't that he didn't want to, he just felt embarrassed. Tsukasa reassured him, saying her family wasn't home and suggested he take a bath while waiting for his clothes to dry. She even offered to scrub his back. Junichi thought she was joking, but she was entirely serious. Tsukasa started to undress, telling Junichi not to look. He obediently turned away, still unable to believe how serious she was. His mind wandered to a dream he'd had where Tsukasa had been scrubbing his back, wearing nothing but a towel. A moment later, Tsukasa came into the bathroom and Junichi quickly closed his eyes. She told him to open them and look at her. When he did, he was astonished. Tsukasa was standing there in a swimsuit, looking incredibly charming. Tsukasa asked if Junichi had any complaints about her. Junichi replied that she looked amazing. In response, Tsukasa playfully knocked him on the head and told him to get out of the bathtub so she could scrub his back. Junichi immediately complied, standing up, but unfortunately didn't realize he was completely naked. Tsukasa was shocked and let out a scream, then slapped him hard, leaving Junichi feeling the sting. She reminded him that it was his own fault for being careless. Junichi quickly apologized and Tsukasa began scrubbing his back. Junichi felt tense at first, but soon realized how enjoyable it was. It felt so much better than doing it himself. Tsukasa asked how it was, and he replied that it felt amazing. While she continued to scrub his back, Tsukasa thanked him, and Junichi asked if it was because of the student council election since she'd already thanked him quite a bit. Tsukasa clarified that it wasn't just for that, but also for helping her with the stray dog and the school festival. She acknowledged that Junichi had done so much for her. She also mentioned that she'd be thrilled if they could end up going to the same university. However, Tsukasa made it clear that she wouldn't sacrifice her chance at a good university just for him, which made Junichi laugh as he reassured her he understood. Tsukasa then leaned closer to him, making Junichi nervous, and reminded him of the promise they made to stay together forever. She also made him reaffirm the other promise, that he wouldn't kiss anyone else but her. Junichi agreed, and they shared a kiss. Afterward, Junichi jokingly asked if she'd be satisfied with just one kiss. Today was graduation day at Kibito High School, and Haruka had successfully completed her high school education. Sayamiya and Ai were now moving up to their second year, while Junichi's classmates were entering their final year as seniors. Today also marked the start of the annual budget committee meeting, with all the student council members and class representatives gathering in the council room. Junichi wanted to keep talking to Tsukasa, but they both had to head to the meeting. Tsukasa reassured him that they could chat as much as they wanted afterward. Junichi clarified that, more than anything, he just wanted to spend more time alone with her. But work was work, and so they headed to the meeting room together. The alarm clock in Rihoko's room kept ringing, but she kept hitting the snooze button and didn't get out of bed right away. Kanai wasn't surprised to see this and called out to Rihoko to get up. Rihoko shouted back, greeting Kanai, and then went right back to sleep. Kanai, annoyed, asked how long she planned on sleeping. Rihoko replied that she'd sleep as long as she wanted. After getting ready, Rihoko asked why her alarm didn't go off. Kanai said it rang loudly as usual, and that she thought Rihoko actually woke up for a moment. Kanai mentioned that this wasn't a good example for the president of the tea club. Rihoko laughed and said it was fine since Junichi was the vice president and he handled everything for her. Kanai didn't entirely agree with Rihoko on this. Rihoko added that Junichi was very reliable. Kanai felt that was just Rihoko's opinion, and she urged Rihoko to hurry up so they wouldn't be late for summer classes. It had been a few months since the upperclassmen graduated, and Junichi joined the tea club to keep Rihoko from being alone, but her feelings for him remained unreciprocated. Now summer classes were in session, and the teacher mentioned that the chapter they were studying would likely be on the exams, so she encouraged the students to study it well. Class ended, and they'd be covering modern history next time. Tsukasa asked the teacher a question and went up to the front of the class. Junichi complained to his friend about spending summer break only in class, but one of his friends wasn't going to let that happen. He was confident he'd get 2 or 3 girlfriends over the summer. Kanai invited Rihoko to hang out after school, but Rihoko apologized, explaining that she had to clean the tea club room with Junichi. Kanai offered to help, but it seemed like she thought better of interrupting Rihoko and Junichi's time alone. Rihoko didn't quite understand Kanai's meaning. Kanai leaned in and asked her quietly how things were going with Junichi. Rihoko didn't understand what Kanai meant by progress. Kanai asked if things were going smoothly between her and Junichi, leaving Rihoko unsure how to answer. Kanai got the hint that there had been no progress, saying that Rihoko was too slow, especially since they were already in the same club, so it was only a matter of time. From the outside, everything looked like it was going well. Kanai added that Junichi and Rihoko already seemed like a couple. Rihoko quickly denied Kanai's observation. Kanai commented that Junichi also wasn't very perceptive. Rihoko glanced over at Junichi, who was with Masayoshi. Junichi was returning a videotape to Masayoshi, who then asked how he liked the adult film. Junichi admitted he lost sleep over it, making Masayoshi laugh. Kanai suggested that the most important thing for Rihoko was to make a big firework this summer. Rihoko didn't understand Kanai's metaphor. Kanai explained that it was time for Junichi to find out about Rihoko's feelings. Junichi and Rihoko head to the tea club room to clean it up. Even though they cleaned it before summer break, it's already dusty again. Rihoko comments to Junichi that it's hard to believe the first term has already ended. She notes that at this rate, the second and third terms will pass quickly too, and soon they'll graduate. Curious, she asks Junichi what he plans to do after graduation, but Junichi's only response to all her questions has been, right. This makes Rihoko wonder if he's even paying attention to her. She approaches him and asks if he's okay. Junichi, lying down and looking weak, says he might have heat exhaustion. Ryoko starts fanning him and asks how he ended up like this. Junichi admits he stayed up all night, and when Ryoko asks why, he's a bit startled and says he was studying something. Ryoko assumes he must have been studying for exams. Junichi then asks Ryoko if she's feeling any heat exhaustion, and she tells him she's fine. Junichi jokes that since Ryoko eats and sleeps a lot, she's probably immune to it, though it wouldn't hurt if she had a little heat exhaustion. Confused, Ryoko asks why he would say that, and Junichi explains that if she did, she might lose her appetite. Ryoko didn't realize that could happen, and Junichi teases her by saying she looks a bit rounder now than in the spring. Shocked, Ryoko can't believe it. They head to the student infirmary, which seems empty. Ryoko mentions that wearing her school uniform might make her heavier than usual. Junichi brushes this off, thinking she's just making excuses. After all, he doesn't know her previous weight, so he suggests she go ahead and weigh herself. Ryoko asks him not to watch. She steps on the scale, shocked at the high number. When she turns around, she sees Junichi has one of his feet on the scale too, and she scolds him. After he steps away, she checks her weight again and quickly covers it, not wanting him to see. Junichi asks how much it's changed from before, and Ryoko insists her weight hasn't changed at all. Changing the subject, Ryoko asks if Junichi remembers when they were in 5th grade, just before summer break, and they measured each other like this. Back then, they went to the school infirmary and Junichi measured Ryoko's height. She was thrilled to find out she'd gotten taller. Then it was Junichi's turn and Ryoko measured him. But instead of focusing, Junichi started staring at Ryoko's chest. Excited, Ryoko cheered because this time she was taller than Junichi. Junichi couldn't believe it, but after checking the measuring tape, he accepted it. Not one to back down, Junichi suggested they compare other measurements and Ryoko agreed, asking what else they'd measure. Junichi suggested chest circumference and Ryoko was up for it. He measured her chest, smiling and taking his time with it, while Ryoko shouted for him to hurry up so they could take turns. She then measured Junichi's chest and cheered again when she won. Overjoyed, Ryoko jumped up and down, leaving Junichi frustrated at being defeated once more. Ryoko started feeling nostalgic about the old days when she and Junichi used to measure their height every year. Usually, Junichi would win. But that one time, Ryoko actually beat him. Junichi mentioned how he was even surprised by how much she had grown, which made Ryoko curious about what kind of size he was talking about. Taken aback, Junichi quickly clarified that he was only referring to her height. He then suggested they play the height measuring game again, just like in the past. Ryoko pointed out that Junichi was clearly taller than her now, but he playfully suggested they add chest measurements to the total height for a fairer comparison, which Ryoko agreed to. After measuring her height, Junichi asked Ryoko to raise her arms so he could measure her chest as well. He seemed a bit flustered, and Ryoko even called him out for taking too long with the measurement. Junichi apologized, and when Ryoko asked for the total, it turned out she still lost. Junichi concluded that both of them had grown significantly over the years. They then headed to the school garden, where Junichi lay down exhausted on a bench. Ryoko asked if his heat stroke was serious. Junichi admitted that it was quite bad, explaining that his eating schedule had also been thrown off since his parents left to visit his uncle, who was sick. Ryoko asked if this was the same get-rich-quick uncle of his, and Junichi confirmed it, adding that he'd been surviving on instant noodles and watermelon. Ryoko joked that if he kept that up, he'd turn into a rhinoceros beetle, and asked why he didn't just ask Mia to cook something for him. But Junichi declined, saying Mia's cooking was worse than the summer heat itself. At this, Ryoko offered to come over and make him dinner, which completely surprised Junichi. He was thrilled, eagerly asking her to come. Ryoko smiled and asked what he'd like to eat for dinner, to which Junichi replied he'd be happy with anything but instant noodles and watermelon. She encouraged him to think of a specific dish, and he mentioned he wanted something that could help with his heat exhaustion. Ryoko considered making something refreshing and nourishing, finally telling him she'd prepare something delicious for dinner. She said goodbye and promised to return at dinner time, heading off to buy ingredients. Junichi told her to be careful, jokingly warning her not to trip. And just then, she stumbled. Junichi smiled, watching her leave, glad to see her so lively. Ryoko, meanwhile, was already excited about what she'd cook later. When she got home, Ryoko immediately started picking out an outfit for her visit to Junichi's. She had 4 options and finally settled on a dress similar to what she'd worn when they used to play together years ago. Even with her undergarments, she couldn't decide, eventually choosing not to change them at all. After dressing, she grabbed her shopping list and headed out for ingredients. Walking with her list in hand, she planned to make soy-glazed eggplant and a chilled pork salad. She decided to go to the butcher's first. Suddenly, someone called her a lost lamb on her way to dinner and offered to guide her down the right path. Rihoko turned and recognized the voices. It was her upperclassmen, Yuzuki Ruriko and Heba Manaka, both former members of the tea club. She greeted them happily, and Ruriko commented on how healthy she looked. Rihoko asked what they were doing there, and they explained they were conducting scientific research. As students in the marine food department, they were spending their summer breaks studying the ecology of eel species. But Rihoko wasn't really listening. She was too distracted by the delicious smell around them. Mia was surprised when her brother told her that Rihoko was coming over to cook dinner. She was thrilled, relieved at the thought of finally not having to eat watermelon again. Though she claimed before that she could survive on just watermelon, which had been delivered to the house earlier, Mia admitted that while it was fun at first, she eventually got tired of it. Laughing, she said she was excited to have a proper dinner for a change and teased Junichi, blaming him for only knowing how to make fried rice. When they opened the fridge and found only watermelon, Junichi joked that they had practically become rhinoceros beetles. Mia asked her brother to go buy some ice cream and Junichi complied. Meanwhile, Rihoko shared with her upperclassmen that she was going to cook for Junichi, which was why she was out shopping for ingredients. She had already decided on what to make but thought eel might also be a good idea. She sampled some eel her seniors had prepared, finding it delicious. Ruriko then asked Rihoko if she had kissed her vice yet, catching her off guard and making her wonder why Ruriko would ask something like that. Based on Rihoko's reaction, Manaka guessed that it hadn't happened yet and that there hadn't been much progress between them. Rihoko admitted as much. After a moment of eye contact, her two seniors handed her a live eel, with Ruriko remarking that eating it would definitely revive Junichi. Ruriko and Manaka assured her she didn't need to be shy about it. When Rihoko tried to take the eel, its slippery surface made it hard for her to hold, and she ended up dropping it, so they gave her a grilled eel instead. Ruriko also suggested other ingredients that might help with sunstroke recovery, like lotus root. She explained that in Chinese characters, lotus root is written to represent training and stamina, symbolizing strength. She added that legendary kung fu masters were known to eat it often. Rihoko smiled, commenting that this felt familiar, just like back when they were all members of the tea club. Ruriko had once asked her if she knew the meaning behind the term "chowkscreen," to which Rihoko had no answer. Ruriko had explained that in ancient Hebrew, shuk meant love and lim meant good luck charm. Rihoko laughed, saying she wouldn't be tricked by Ruriko again, as she had grown up since then. Ruriko responded that she wouldn't pull those kinds of pranks anymore, as they were now university students and adult women. But Rihoko seemed a bit doubtful. Ruriko asked if Rihoko didn't trust her, and Rihoko apologized for being suspicious. Rihoko took notes on her seniors' cooking tips and thanked them. She then asked how they were finding college life and if they were having fun. Ruriko replied that it was pretty enjoyable, and Rihoko asked if they had joined the tea club again. They said no, they had joined the tennis club this time. Rihoko imagined them looking glamorous in tennis outfits, which Ruriko seemed to notice, teasing her that she knew exactly what Rihoko was imagining. Embarrassed, Rihoko blurted out, asking how they knew. Ruriko called her an innocent girl, while Manaka referred to her as a sweet kid. Ruriko also gave her some eel liver, and Manaka suggested that Rihoko make it into eel liver soup. Ruriko expressed hope that Junichi would enjoy Rihoko's cooking. As Rihoko was leaving, Ruriko prayed that the power of the eel would make Junichi strong that night, giving him unparalleled stamina, as Manaka put it. After finishing her shopping, Rihoko suddenly heard someone call her name, inviting her for tea. She turned to see it was her classmate Makabe, who was also surprised to see her. He seemed captivated by Rihoko's appearance and asked if she had been out shopping like him. Rihoko confirmed and explained she had been buying ingredients for dinner. She then said goodbye, but Makabe stopped her. While Junichi is at the supermarket buying ice cream, he suddenly spots Rihoko walking past the store's glass window. He quickly rushes outside, but Rihoko is already out of sight. Meanwhile, Makabe has taken Rihoko to a spot near the train tracks. Curious, Rihoko asks why Makabe brought her there. Makabe corners her against the fence and immediately begins complimenting her, saying how beautiful she looks in that outfit and how incredibly attractive she is. Rihoko is still unsure about what Makabe is trying to do. He goes on to say that seeing her like this stirs up intense feelings in him and wonders why he never noticed before. McCabe then confesses his love for Rihoko and asks her to go out with him. Taken aback by the sudden confession, Rihoko feels it's all happening too fast, but McCabe insists that love often comes unexpectedly and urges her to accept his feelings. However, Rihoko declines, explaining that she already has someone she likes. From a distance, Junichi catches sight of them. Intrigued, McCabe asks who it is that Rihoko loves. She begins to tell him the person's name, but unfortunately, Junichi can't hear it as her words are drowned out by the sound of a passing train. McCabe cornered Rihoko against the fence and immediately complimented her. He told Rihoko that she looked beautiful in that outfit and also very attractive. Rihoko still didn't understand what McCabe was up to. He added that seeing her now made him feel his passion rising, and for some reason he couldn't believe he hadn't noticed it until now. McCabe then confessed his love to Rihoko and asked her to date him. Rihoko felt it was too sudden, but McCabe insisted that love often comes unexpectedly and urged her to accept his feelings. However, Rihoko declined because she already had someone she liked. From a distance, Junichi watched the scene. Curious, McCabe asked who it was that Rihoko loved. She told him, but unfortunately, Junichi couldn't hear her because her voice was drowned out by the sound of a passing train. After hearing Rihoko say the name of the person she liked, McCabe let her go and told her not to regret rejecting him. Rihoko felt relieved and continued on her way to Junichi's house. Along the way, she remembered Kana's advice that it was time Junichi knew about her feelings. McCabe, meanwhile, continued trying to flirt with other girls who passed by, but unfortunately, this time he ended up hitting on his seniors. Realizing his mistake, he quickly apologized and fled, leaving the upperclassmen smiling at his antics. When Rihoko arrived at Junichi's house, she was warmly welcomed by Mia, who had been waiting for her. Mia eagerly asked if she'd seen Junichi on the way. Rihoko said she hadn't. Not long after, Junichi returned home, surprised to see Rihoko's shoes already at the door. Taking a deep breath to calm his nerves, he greeted everyone. Mia immediately went to her older brother, disappointed to find the ice cream he'd brought had melted. Junichi greeted Rihoko, who smiled and thanked him for letting her come over. Their awkwardness didn't go unnoticed by Mia, who asked what was going on between the two of them. Both Rihoko and Junichi said that there was nothing going on. Rihoko then offered to start cooking since Junichi and Mia were probably hungry. Mia volunteered to help, but Junichi stopped her, reminding her of the time she mixed up dashi with barley seasoning, which had made the miso soup taste strange. Rihoko just smiled at the sibling squabble. Mia shushed her brother, saying that everyone makes mistakes sometimes. While waiting for the food to be ready, Mia and Junichi watched TV together. Rihoko was busy cooking when Junichi approached her. Rihoko called out to him, and Junichi said he wanted to ask her something. He told her that when he was out buying ice cream, he'd noticed a lot of couples out and about this summer. Junichi then asked Rihoko what she thought about that. After thinking back to her own shopping trip, Rihoko said she didn't see that many couples. Junichi replied that maybe it was just a coincidence. Rihoko then asked if that was all they wanted to say. Junichi, flustered, said yes, that was all, and turned to go back to the TV room. However, Rihoko called him back, feeling nervous about saying something, but ultimately stopping herself and just telling him that she'd make something delicious for him. Junichi replied that he was looking forward to her cooking and returned to the TV room. Rihoko felt disappointed in herself for not confessing her feelings, quietly calling herself pathetic. Dinner was finally ready, and Rihoko had prepared an impressive spread. Mia and Junichi were both shocked to see it, with Mia calling Rihoko amazing and Junichi complimented her, saying the food looked delicious and asking if the ingredients were expensive. Rihoko just smiled, telling him that she'd gotten some of the ingredients from an upperclassman. Ruriko and Manaka were out fishing, chatting about how Rihoko was probably busy making a refreshing, energy-boosting meal with all her effort. Ruriko mentioned that they had tricked Rihoko again when she told her about another ingredient that supposedly treats heat stroke, lotus root. Lotus root is written in Chinese characters meaning training and steak, symbolizing fitness. It said that kung fu masters often eat it. Manaka commented that Rihoko is such a naive girl. Ruriko hoped it was time for Rihoko to confess her feelings to Junichi. Suddenly, something tugged on Ruriko's line. It moved fast, and the fish seemed huge. Manaka jumped in to help pull it up. After Rihoko talked about her upperclassmen, Junichi asked what their college life was like. Rihoko said they were doing well, enjoying life as students, and they even joined the tennis club. For a moment, Junichi imagined how attractive her upperclassmen must look in tennis outfits. Rihoko said they were very kind, teaching her many things and even showing her how to make the dinner recipe they were eating that night. Junichi smiled and continued enjoying his meal. Mia thanked Rihoko for making the dinner, and Junichi was so full he could barely move. Mia commented that Junichi's appetite had finally returned, and he replied that it was because the food was so delicious. Rihoko smiled with satisfaction, grateful she could cook for Junichi and Mia. Junichi thanked her, and Rihoko waved it off, saying that if they liked it, she can come over to cook dinner again. Mia was thrilled to hear this, and Junichi happily agreed. Just then, the phone rang. Mia asked Junichi to answer it because she was too full to move. Junichi refused, saying he was sure the call was for Mia anyway, and that she should pick it up. Mia argued back, and they decided to settle it by playing rock, paper, scissors. In the end, Mia had to answer. It turned out to be Sai, who apologized for calling so late and invited Mia to go to the amusement park with her the next day. Junichi overheard Mia's conversation and felt proud for correctly guessing that the call was for her. Rihoko was cleaning up the dishes, and when Junichi offered to help, Rihoko told him it was fine. She called Junichi's name, wanting to say something, but Mia suddenly yelled loudly from her call. Mia ran over to Junichi and Rihoko, announcing that she'd be going to the amusement park with Sai and Ai tomorrow. Overjoyed, Mia suddenly declared that it was time for dessert. Junichi called her out on it, pointing out that she had just said she was full. Mia replied that there's always extra room for dessert and asked Rihoko if she wanted some too. Rihoko nodded, smiling. Junichi laughed, commenting on how Mia's appetite was truly incredible. Rihoko smiled at this. Mia prepared shaved ice for dessert, and for herself, she made an enormous portion. Junichi warned her that her stomach might hurt if she ate it all, but she simply poured syrup over the ice. Ideally, it would have been time for ice cream, but unfortunately, the ice cream had melted. Junichi apologized for that. Mia then proudly displayed her 7-flavor shaved ice creation, offering some to Rihoko, who just smiled back. Heavy rain began to pour outside, so Mia suggested that Rihoko spend the night at their house. Rihoko initially declined, but Mia worried that she'd catch a cold if she walked home in such heavy rain. Mia asked her brother what he thought, and Junichi agreed it would be best if Rihoko didn't mind. In the end, Rihoko decided to stay over and gave Junichi a grateful smile. Rihoko was soaking in the bath, thinking in disbelief about how she was staying at Junichi's house tonight. So much had happened in one day. Meanwhile, Junichi was looking through his small photo album, filled with pictures of him and Rihoko from when they were kids, all the way through grade school to high school, each photo perfectly organized. There was even a picture of the two of them in the tea club room. Rihoko tried to build up her confidence, telling herself that she would confess her feelings tonight. Junichi heard Rihoko finish her bath, and Mia offered her a futon. Rihoko apologized to Mia for the trouble, but Mia was thrilled, saying she was excited to sleep next to Rihoko. Mia even joked about using Rihoko's soft chest as a pillow. Junichi knocked on Mia's door, asking if Rihoko's clothes fit her. He was stunned when he saw Rihoko, and without thinking, muttered soft while looking at her chest. Rihoko was confused and asked what he meant. Junichi quickly covered up, saying he didn't mean anything by it, and then asked if the clothes fit her. Rihoko replied that they fit just fine and thanked him. Mia commented that Rihoko looked squeezed into Mia's clothes, but luckily Junichi's clothes fit her comfortably. Mia then quickly shooed her brother out of the room and shut the door. In the middle of the night, Rihoko noticed Mia sleepwalking out of the room, leaving her a bit puzzled. Mia ended up in Junichi's room, startling him as she walked in. He was even more surprised when she began to pull down her pants. Junichi leaped out of bed and gently shook Mia awake. Mia opened her eyes, mumbling bathroom, and Junichi sighed, saying she must have eaten too much shaved ice. Afterward, Mia returned to her room to continue sleeping. However, Mia's loud snoring kept Rihoko awake. She got up and walked to Junichi's room, knocking on his door only to find he wasn't there. Rihoko went out to the porch, where she found Junichi sitting and gazing into the yard. He turned around, noticing her behind him, and asked why she'd come out. Rihoko said she couldn't sleep, and it turned out that Junichi couldn't either. They sat together on the porch, looking out into the yard. The rain had finally stopped, and just as Rihoko began to say something to Junichi, he invited her to play with sparklers together. Rihoko agreed. Junichi reminisced about their childhood, recalling how they played with sparklers almost every day during summer break. If you remember right, the fireworks they used to play with had little parachutes. Rihoko laughed, saying he used to get so excited trying to catch the parachutes that floated down after the fireworks exploded. Junichi remembered how much Rihoko loved the sparkling fireworks. She told him the sparkling lights of the fireworks were so beautiful. They'd even had competitions to see whose firework would last the longest, and when Junichi's went out first, Rihoko would give him hers, only for it to go out soon after. They recreated those childhood memories by lighting sparklers together. Rihoko mentioned how their last summer break in high school was almost over, and it felt like it had flown by, like it was just yesterday. They attended the opening ceremony as new students. Rihoko asked if Junichi had decided on what he wanted to do after graduation. Junichi returned the question, and she admitted she was still undecided. He remarked that it was time for them both to figure it out soon. Junichi said that ever since kindergarten, they had always been together, no matter where they went. Rihoko was about to say something to Junichi, but held back out of nervousness. Suddenly, she was startled when Junichi mentioned how nice it would be if things could stay just like this. Rihoko tried to speak up, but again hesitated. Right as Junichi accidentally stepped on a firework, causing him to fall forward, nearly landing on Rihoko. They found themselves face to face, locking eyes. Both quickly apologized, turned away in embarrassment, and sat in silence for a moment before simultaneously calling each other's name. Junichi then confessed that he liked her. He admitted that he hadn't realized how close they'd gotten, but he knew he had always liked her and was certain of his feelings. Rihoko smiled, saying she felt the same, that she liked him too and always wanted to be together. With that, the two shared a kiss. The next morning, Junichi and Rihoko were having tea together. Junichi praised the green tea, saying it was delicious, probably because Rihoko had made it. Rihoko smiled and said it was likely because she'd made it for someone she liked very much. Just then, Mia walked out to join them and greeted them cheerfully. In an instant, Rihoko and Junichi moved a little farther apart. Mia noticed and asked why they both looked so red. Junichi nervously suggested it might be because the tea was hot, while Rihoko offered that maybe it was because of the warm weather. Mia stared at her brother, inching closer, and commented that something seemed strange about him. Junichi raised his voice, insisting there was nothing strange about him. Mia, puzzled, asked why he seemed so upset, still doubtful of his answer. Rihoko simply smiled, watching the sibling banner play out in front of her. Junichi and Ai went to the beach together, and Junichi mentioned that he felt really cold. Of course, it was freezing since they went to the beach during winter. It was Junichi's idea to come here in the first place. He worried they might catch a cold if they stayed like this, so he suggested warming up. Ai didn't quite understand what he meant until Junichi suddenly squeezed himself into her jacket and hugged her. He said Ai's body felt so warm, and Ai asked if this was the real reason he wanted to come here. Junichi admitted that for today it was. After all, they rarely saw each other at school lately. Recently, Junichi had been busy attending prep sessions for university entrance exams, while Ai had her hands full with swim club activities and household chores. Junichi mentioned how much he was looking forward to their Christmas date, and Ai agreed. It had been almost a year since their last Christmas, and the season was just around the corner again. Last year was so much fun. Unfortunately, when they visited the hot springs last time, they couldn't climb the hill because the deer population was rapidly growing. Just as Ai was about to ask about their plans for this year's date, she realized Junichi had fallen asleep on her shoulder. In his sleep, he murmured something about definitely getting into university and becoming a man worthy of her. Ai smiled at the sight of him mumbling in his sleep and called him a hopeless upperclassman. The next day, Ai went to Junichi's house. Mia opened the door and greeted her cheerfully. Ai greeted her back and asked where Junichi was. Mia explained that he was still asleep, likely because he had been up late studying. Ai then headed straight to Junichi's room to wake him up. Mia thanked her for doing this almost every day and mentioned how lucky Junichi was to have a girlfriend like Ai. When she entered Junichi's room, Ai immediately opened the curtains and tried to wake him up. However, Junichi complained about still being sleepy. Ai warned him that he had just enough time to get ready or risk skipping school for the day. Junichi jokingly suggested that skipping wasn't such a bad idea. Ai countered by threatening to pull him out of bed if he didn't wake up. But instead, Junichi pulled her under the blanket and hugged her. Later, Ai and Junichi walked to school together. On the way, Junichi kept yawning, prompting Ai to ask if he had indeed been up late studying as Mia had mentioned. Junichi admitted he got carried away because he was feeling so motivated to work on practice exams. Ai praised his hard work but gently reminded him not to overdo it. Junichi thanked her for the advice. When they reached school, Ai's friends greeted her, teasing her about how lovey-dovey she and Junichi seemed every morning. Ai blushed in embarrassment. In class, Masayoshi was pleading with Junichi about something. Confused, Junichi asked him what was going on. Masayoshi explained that if things continued like this, his 3 years of high school would feel meaningless. He desperately wanted to have a girlfriend before Christmas. Masayoshi insisted that Junichi must know someone, maybe through his sister or Ai, and begged to be introduced to a girl. Although Junichi couldn't guarantee anything, Masayoshi kept pleading, saying Junichi was his only hope. As Masayoshi continued to tug at Junichi in desperation, they ended up falling to the floor, landing awkwardly on top of each other. Masayoshi kept pleading with Junichi, who tried to push him off. This bizarre scene was witnessed by Kiko and Kaoru, who were left utterly confused about what Masayoshi and Junichi were doing. During the lunch break, most students headed to the cafeteria to relax, but Junichi chose to spend his time in the library. There, Tsukasa approached him and asked if he was studying. Junichi explained that his prep class was on break that day, so he decided to change the scenery a bit. He then asked if Tsukasa was also studying and mentioned that she had already received an offer from a university. Tsukasa replied that studying had become a habit for her, and she felt uncomfortable if she wasn't doing it. Junichi admired her dedication, admitting he wished studying would become a habit for him too. Tsukasa simply smiled, unsure of how to respond, and left. Feeling it was time to head home, Junichi suddenly remembered something and decided to visit the swimming pool. The place was bustling with activity, as several new members had recently joined. Junichi became engrossed in watching the swim club members, almost forgetting why he came there in the first place. Among them, he noticed Ai teaching the new members how to swim. Watching her take charge as captain reminded him of their senior, Sukahara Hibiki, from the previous year. Junichi waved at Ai, but she returned his gesture with a sharp glare. Junichi was scolded by Ai, who reminded him that boys weren't allowed in the pool area while the girls' swim club was practicing. Had he forgotten the rules? Junichi admitted he hadn't forgotten. He just wanted to see Ai. However, he apologized for breaking the rules. The swim club members, noticing the exchange, teased Ai, suggesting she go easy on Junichi since everyone knew she often looked toward the entrance around this time. Embarrassed, Ai realized Junichi now knew she had been eagerly awaiting him. Ai asked Junichi if he regretted what he had done and warned him not to come back during club activities. Junichi sincerely apologized and promised not to repeat his mistake. Ai forgave him and ended his punishment, but suddenly Mia showed up, urging Ai not to let him off so easily. Junichi, surprised to see Mia there, asked what she was doing at the pool. Mia revealed she had joined the swim club this year. Junichi was shocked to learn this, as Mia had kept it a secret. She explained that it was more fun to surprise him this way. When Junichi asked Ai if she had known, Ai admitted that Mia had asked her to keep it a secret from him. Mia insisted Ai punished Junichi further, accusing him of ogling not just Ai, but also the other girls while grinning. Ai, startled, turned to Junichi, who quickly denied grinning at anyone. Mia called her brother a liar, pointing out how pervy his face had looked earlier. Junichi, flustered, covered his face in embarrassment. Mia laughed, thoroughly amused by her brother's awkwardness. Ai then called out to Junichi, and she and the other girls approached him with angry expressions. Panicking, Junichi tried to explain that it was all a misunderstanding, but it was too late. Their frustration boiled over, and they ganged up on him. On their way home, Ai was visibly upset with Junichi, feeling that his behavior had gone too far. However, Junichi kept insisting that he only went to the pool to see her. Since he had no prep class that day, he thought it would be nice to walk home together after so long. Ai eventually softened and forgave him, but on one condition. As punishment, Junichi had to accompany her grocery shopping. Ai mentioned there was a big sale today, with a maximum of 2 cartons of eggs and 1 bottle of milk per person at the nearby supermarket. Junichi gladly accepted his punishment, but Ai warned him that she wouldn't forgive him again if he ever peeked at the girls in the pool. Later that day, Junichi was resting in the school infirmary. During lunch break, Ai went to check on him. She gently covered him with a blanket, but the movement woke him up. Ai apologized for disturbing him. Junichi thanked her for tucking him in and tried to sit up, but Ai stopped him, insisting he should stay lying down. Curious, Junichi asked why Ai had come to see him. She explained she had been looking for him to eat lunch together, but now she understood since Mia told her he'd been up all night studying. Hearing Mia's name, Junichi remembered something. He shared a childhood memory of how Mia loved falling asleep on their dad's stomach. Ai laughed, recalling her little brother Ikuo, who would quickly fall asleep when she sang him lullabies, though he never slept on her stomach. Junichi then jokingly suggested he might fall asleep better if Ai let him rest on her stomach while she sang him a lullaby. Ai, flustered, asked if he really expected her to do that. Junichi casually replied that it wouldn't bother him if it didn't bother her. Ai naturally refused, saying it would be way too embarrassing if someone walked in. Junichi countered that it wouldn't be an issue if they closed the curtain around the bed, confidently claiming it would relieve all his study-induced fatigue. Ai hesitated for a moment before reluctantly agreeing, sighing as she closed the curtain. She asked how to go about it, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. After Junichi lay his head on her lap, Ai covered his eyes, muttering how embarrassing it felt. Junichi shifted slightly, but Ai scolded him to stay still. Finally, Ai began singing a lullaby she used to sing to her younger brother. To her surprise, it worked. Junichi quickly drifted off into a peaceful sleep. That evening, Ai reminded her brother Ikuo to prepare his school books and go to bed. However, she found him already fast asleep under the kotatsu. She woke him gently, urging him to move to his bed. Once Ikuo went to his room, Ai began thinking about where she and Junichi should go for their Christmas Eve date. The next day, Junichi approached Ai looking troubled. He apologized, saying that his prep class results from last week had just come in, and he was struggling to figure out how to tell her. Ai asked if his results were bad, and Junichi nodded. When she asked just how bad, Junichi sheepishly admitted that if she looked at the rankings from the bottom up, she'd find his name quickly. Ai was shocked. Junichi explained he had answered correctly, but had written his answers in the wrong rows. Ai sighed, saying she understood if it was just a mistake. However, Junichi was still embarrassed. Ai reassured him, saying there was no need to apologize since he could just do better next time. Junichi clarified that his apology wasn't for that. He explained that because of his poor results, he was now required to attend a strict training camp for low scorers, starting on December 23. Ai was taken aback. Junichi continued, explaining that he had tried to negotiate with his prep teacher, arguing that his answers were correct aside from the misplaced rows. However, the teacher refused to make exceptions, stating that such errors wouldn't be forgiven in the actual entrance exams. Worse, Junichi revealed that rumors about the training camp described it as harsh. The head instructor was said to be incredibly strict, and attendees would be quarantined for the entire duration of the camp. They would be woken up at 5 a.m. every day and required to study relentlessly until bedtime. Ai couldn't hide her dismay at hearing this. After hearing Junichi's explanation, Ai mentioned that she also needed to attend the women's swim club after party following the school anniversary celebration. She was a little worried that this might cut into their date time. As the captain of the swim club, Ai had to be there, so she pointed out that it was just a coincidence they both had events happening at the same time. Ai asked Junichi not to worry too much about it. Junichi promised to make it up to her, and Ai said she'd look forward to it. Before leaving, she encouraged Junichi to do his best at the training camp. Sei announced to her classmates that their class had decided to perform a play for the school anniversary celebration. She asked them to start assigning roles and supporting staff and encourage everyone to share their thoughts. Meanwhile, Ai was lost in her thoughts, regretting what she had told Junichi earlier. The morning practices for next year's club meetings wouldn't start until next week, but with the school anniversary preparations underway, their time together was going to be even more limited. Mia, noticing Ai's distraction, asked what role Ai wanted to play in the drama. Although Mia knew Ai was already busy running the Odin stall, she suggested Ai try participating in the play too. It might be a chance for her to enjoy both. Unfortunately, Ai wasn't paying attention to Mia's words. All the students were busy with preparations for the school festival, and Ai was no exception. Junichi, on the other hand, was preoccupied with his prep classes, leaving them with no time to meet. Ai's constant worrying began to concern Sai and Mia. Meanwhile, Junichi often fell asleep in class from staying up late studying and even got scolded by his teachers. Ai couldn't stop thinking about him, and after school, Junichi spotted a coat on display in a store and found himself drawn to it. The day of the school anniversary celebration arrived, and Ai's classmates busied themselves preparing for the play. Ai, however, still couldn't shake her thoughts about Junichi. She wandered into the infirmary to reminisce about the time they had spent there together. With the training camp just around the corner, Ai decided to make a blanket for Junichi, hoping he could use it during the camp. It felt early, but she thought a Christmas gift like this might show him how much she supported him. Elsewhere, Kiko was chatting with Kaoru about good places for a Christmas date. Kaoru suggested Port Tower, a popular spot, and mentioned other options like amusement parks, movie theaters, and karaoke places. Kiko wondered if any Christmas-themed movies would be playing in theaters. This reminded Kaoru of a special aquarium show held exclusively on Christmas Day. Kiko imagined spending Christmas Eve with someone she loved at a magical aquarium, thinking it would be incredibly romantic. Kaoru agreed, saying an atmosphere like that would make any guy swoon. Just imagining it made Kiko's heart race. Unbeknownst to them, Ai overheard their conversation. Kaoru then laughed, realizing it was pointless for her and Keiko to discuss Christmas date spots since neither of them had a boyfriend. Ai was reminded of what Mia had told her earlier, that Junichi had been taken to the training camp by his prep school last night. Mia explained that the camp hadn't officially started yet, but students with especially low scores had to begin earlier to study longer. According to Mia, people from the prep school had suddenly arrived at their home and taken Junichi away. Before leaving, Junichi asked Mia to let Ai know. When Christmas Eve arrived, couples everywhere spent the evening together, celebrating the holiday with their loved ones, except for Ai. She celebrated alone, thinking about Junichi, who was likely studying hard at the camp. She tried to understand his situation, knowing how important it was for him. As she walked home, her mind was filled with memories of the moments they had shared together.
Today marks the 58th anniversary celebration of Kibito High School, with various events being held on campus, including food stalls, games, and a drama performance by Mia's class. The play they performed was Romeo and Juliet, where Sae played Juliet and Mia took on the role of Romeo. The audience was thoroughly entertained by their performance. Meanwhile, Ai was busy managing the Odin stall, cheerfully serving customers. Before long, some junior members of the swimming club offered to take over, encouraging Ai to take a break. Grateful, she thanked them and stepped outside to the schoolyard to gaze at the moon. Her thoughts drifted to Junichi, who was diligently studying at his training camp. At the study camp, Junichi was focused on solving mock exam questions with determination. Back at the schoolyard, Ai couldn't stop thinking about him. She recalled how much fun they had last year, working together at the Odin stall and then swimming together at the hot springs. Tears unexpectedly welled up in her eyes as she missed Junichi deeply. She didn't understand why she felt so vulnerable. Meanwhile, Junichi successfully completed his exam exercises quickly, his hard work paying off. The anniversary celebration eventually came to an end. Sae and Mia expressed their gratitude to all their classmates who had helped. Ai approached them and complimented Mia and Sae, saying they looked perfectly in sync during the drama. Mia laughed, crediting their success to Sae. Sae, on the other hand, apologized, saying she only fully understood her role at the last minute. Mia dismissed Sae's concerns, insisting that the audience had loved the play. Ai also apologized for not being able to help with the drama, but Maya reassured her that it wasn't a problem since she knew Ai had been busy as the captain of the girls' swim team. Maya even apologized for not being able to assist at the Odin stall. Ai responded that the new members had worked hard, so everything went smoothly there. The three of them smiled, satisfied that the celebration had gone well. However, Ai's expression soon turned somber again. Noticing Ai's mood, Mia suggested they have a sleepover at Sae's house that night. Mia invited Ai to join, and Sae happily agreed. Though Ai hesitated at first, Mia's persistent persuasion eventually convinced her. The three girls walked home together, braving the cold night air. Mia couldn't wait to get to Sae's house to start their little party. Ai asked what they'd be doing at the sleepover, and Mia enthusiastically suggested a gaming competition, followed by a heart-to-heart sharing session, and ending with a steamed bun eating contest. Everyone agreed to the plan. Suddenly, Ai stopped and mentioned she had forgotten something important, buying a Christmas gift for her younger brother, Ikuo. She had been so preoccupied with swim practice and preparing for the anniversary celebration that she completely forgot. Ai decided to buy the gift and deliver it to Ikuo right away. She asked Mia and Sae to start the sleepover festivities without her, promising to join them as soon as possible. Mia and Sae didn't mind and agreed to wait for her. Grateful, Ai thanked them and hurried off to the store to purchase the gift. She dashed through the bustling crowd of people enjoying Christmas Eve with their loved ones. As Ai walked down the street, her thoughts drifted to the moments she shared with Junichi. both of them looking forward to the Christmas Eve date they were supposed to have. While picking out a gift for her younger brother, she spotted a toy catalog advertising a discount on the action belt Inago mask, the same toy she and Junichi had played with last year. Memories of that happy time resurfaced, and without realizing it, tears started to roll down her cheeks. The loneliness of being apart from Junichi weighed on her, and she began to wonder what the future would hold if he entered university. Would they struggle to see each other then? Suddenly, a voice behind her spoke, saying something about missing the action belt Inago mask. Startled, Ai turned around and was shocked to see Junichi, panting and out of breath, standing right there. He asked if she remembered how they used to strike transformation poses with the toy. Overwhelmed, Ai's tears flowed even more as she struggled to believe that Junichi was actually in front of her. She asked him why he was there and how his study camp was going. Junichi admitted that he had snuck out, but only after finishing everything. There was another mock test scheduled for today, but he had already answered all the questions. He couldn't help himself. He missed Ai so much that he decided to escape the camp just to see her. Ai called Junichi crazy, and he simply laughed. He told her he wanted to keep his promise to have a Christmas date with her, and then asked if she had plans with anyone else. Ai explained that she was supposed to stay over at Sae's house with Mia that evening. To let Sae know, the two of them went to a public phone to call her. When Sae picked up and heard Ai's name, Mia quickly grabbed the phone and asked if Ai had already bought Ikuo's Christmas gift. Mia urged Ai to hurry over because they were about to start the party. Suddenly, a male voice interrupted the call, declaring himself as a masked thief who had kidnapped Ai. The voice added that unfortunately, Ai couldn't join them and told them not to be too disappointed. Confused, Sae asked what was going on, while Mia jumped in excitement and praised her older brother's antics. Sae still didn't understand, but Mia apologized, explaining that Ai wouldn't be able to come after all. It seemed Junichi had returned from his study camp. Ai turned to Junichi, asking why he said something so ridiculous on the phone. Laughing, Junichi admitted he was just joking. Ai called him a hopeless upperclassman, shaking her head. Afterward, they went to pick out Ikuo's gift and delivered it to her house. However, by the time they got there, Ikuo was already fast asleep. Ai gently placed the present beside him and then stepped back outside to meet Junichi, who had been waiting for her. Hand in hand, the two of them set off to begin their Christmas date. They headed to a Christmas event in the city center, which was bustling with people enjoying the once-a-year festivities. Ai couldn't help but gaze at Junichi, prompting him to ask why she was staring at him so much. Ai confessed that she still couldn't believe she was spending Christmas Eve with him. It all felt like a dream. Junichi smiled, admitting he felt the same way. As they exchanged smiles and gazes, Junichi suddenly sneezed. He sheepishly explained that he had rushed out so quickly that he forgot to bring a jacket. Ai apologized for not noticing earlier and offered Junichi her jacket to keep warm. Junichi declined her offer and instead suggested they step into a store to warm up. Once inside, he led Ai to a clothing store and asked her to try on a coat displayed on the rack. Junichi explained that he had noticed the coat on his way back from his study sessions and thought it would look stunning on Ai. He asked her to consider it as a Christmas gift from him. Junichi admitted that their time together had been limited due to his study camp and encouraged Ai to accept the gift, saying it would make him happy to see her wear it. Ai gratefully accepted the coat and promised to take good care of it. She then offered to buy Junichi a jacket as a gift in return, but he insisted it wasn't necessary. Ai playfully told him to wear a jacket anyway so he wouldn't catch a cold during such an important time. Finally, Junichi decided to borrow Ai's jacket and immediately put it on, commenting on how warm it was. He jokingly asked if the jacket looked good on him. Ai burst out laughing, which made Junichi assume the jacket didn't suit him. Ai quickly clarified that her laughter wasn't because of that. She was just happy to see him wearing it. The two of them laughed together before continuing their Christmas date. Meanwhile, Masayoshi wandered the streets alone, lamenting loudly about not having a girlfriend. He worried that his 3 years of high school would end up being completely empty. Suddenly, he spotted Junichi and Ai walking together in front of him. Confused, he wondered aloud how Junichi was there since he was supposed to be at the study camp. Just then, someone approached Masayoshi and showed him a photo of Junichi, asking if he had seen him. The person explained that Junichi had escaped from the study camp and needed to be found. Masayoshi, thinking quickly, claimed he had just seen Junichi but deliberately gave the wrong directions. Afterward, Masayoshi chuckled to himself, calling it his Christmas gift to Junichi. Determined not to lose to his friend, he boldly approached a random girl passing by and invited her on a date. At Sae's house, Mia wondered aloud what Ai might be doing at that moment. Sae said she didn't know either. Mia decided it was time for their steamed bun-eating contest, but surprised Sae by lying down and resting her head on Sae's chest instead. Mia was fascinated by how soft and large Sae's chest was, declaring that she wanted to experience it for herself. Sae, bewildered, asked what Mia was doing. Laughing, Mia joked that Sae should share some of it as a Christmas gift. Sae blushed and firmly refused, but Mia kept giggling as she playfully nuzzled her face into Sae's chest. Meanwhile, Junichi and Ai spent time playing games together. They tried out every game available and had an amazing time. It had been a while since Ai felt so satisfied and carefree. After finishing their gaming session, they continued their Christmas date, strolling through the festive streets. However, they hadn't decided where to go next. As they walked, Ai suddenly noticed that she didn't recognize the area. Looking around, she realized they had wandered into a love hotel district. Junichi froze in surprise and quickly explained that it wasn't intentional. They had simply ended up there by accident. Ai fell silent and tightly held Junichi's hand. Junichi didn't know how to respond or what to say. Suddenly, they heard someone stepping out of a spa. It was Maya Takahashi, Junichi's homeroom teacher from his second year in high school. Maya called out Junichi's name, startling him. Panicking, Junichi grabbed Ai's hand and pulled her away to flee the scene. As Maya was about to chase after them, Masayoshi appeared and called her a beautiful young lady. Smiling, Maya turned around, and just as Masayoshi started to suggest having tea together, both were caught off guard upon recognizing each other. Meanwhile, Junichi and Ai ran until they reached a park on a hill. Out of breath but laughing, they both paused to recover. Junichi admitted how startled he had been, and Ai chuckled, saying at least it turned into an unforgettable memory. Junichi agreed. He wouldn't forget this day. Standing side by side, they gazed at the city below, mesmerized by the glowing lights. As they admired the view, snow began to fall. Ai admitted how lonely and scared she had felt when she wasn't with Junichi. She confessed to being overwhelmed by her thoughts, wondering why she had become so vulnerable. She couldn't stop worrying about what would happen when Junichi started university and how that might affect their time together. Junichi reassured her, promising that nothing would change. He told her that even after starting university, his feelings for her would remain the same, and he believed their love would only grow stronger because they would always be together. However, Junichi admitted he had to return to the study camp tomorrow, meaning their time together was limited. Ai smiled warmly and offered to secretly bring him a bento lunch at the camp. Surprised by her suggestion, Junichi laughed and pointed out the risk. If she got caught, they'd both face trouble from the instructors. Ai playfully asked if he was scared, but Junichi said he'd feel proud instead. Junichi then revealed his future plan. Once he started university, he intended to rent his own apartment. If Ai was comfortable with the idea, he wanted her to have a key to his place. Touched, Ai asked if he was sure about this. Junichi assured her it was entirely her choice. Ai agreed, promising she'd visit every morning to wake him up. Nodding, Junichi pulled her into a warm embrace, and they shared a tender kiss. Sometime later, Ai and Junichi were in the apartment. Ai gently woke Junichi, telling him the fireworks had started. They opened the window to watch the dazzling display. Junichi beamed with excitement as the first firework lit up the sky. Ai laughed, teasing him for acting like a child. Junichi asked if he really seemed that childish, and Ai responded by calling him a big kid. They both laughed together, enjoying the breathtaking view. As they continued watching, Ai expressed her desire to see fireworks with Junichi again next year, and every year after that. Junichi wholeheartedly agreed, wanting to always be by Ai's side. Ai leaned closer and softly asked Junichi to always take care of her.
Inago Mask appeared, taking down the villains during a live show. Kaoru, acting as the MC, hosted the event with great energy. She encouraged the audience to cheer for Inago Mask. Junichi played the role of one of the villains, but he was annoyed because Kaoru seemed to enjoy watching him get attacked by Inago Mask. Kaoru shouted for Inago Mask to defeat all 3 enemies in a single strike. Inago Mask responded by unleashing a series of moves: Inago Punch, Inago Kick, and finally Inago Attack, which sent Junichi flying backstage. Junichi, frustrated because the scene didn't follow the script, began plotting his revenge. Meanwhile, Kaoru continued to lead the show, thanking the audience for helping Inago Mask win. Suddenly, a group of kids yelled to Kaoru, pointing out something behind her. It turned out Junichi had transformed into a monster. First, with a super change, he became a sea cucumber monster, tying Kaoru up with a rope. Kaoru immediately realized this was off-script. Then, with an ultra change, he transformed into a whale monster, spraying water at Kaoru and soaking her, leaving her drenched and her figure somewhat revealed. The audience wasted no time snapping photos. Finally, he made a deluxe change into a squid monster. Kaoru and Junichi had planned this performance beforehand as part of their summer break activities. One morning, Kaoru walked into Junichi's classroom. Curious, she asked why he had called her there so early. Junichi explained he needed help with an art assignment. He admitted he was struggling with his drawing and was worried he'd get into trouble if he couldn't improve. Pleading for her assistance, Kaoru happily agreed, knowing she was good at drawing. She looked at Junichi's sketch and initially thought he was attempting abstract art. She remarked that it seemed challenging, only to realize it was supposed to be a landscape, specifically the view from the classroom window where Junichi sat. Surprised, she couldn't believe the messy lines were meant to represent a scene. Junichi apologized for how bad his drawing was. Kaoru then sat in Junichi's seat, catching him off guard. He asked what she was doing, and Kaoru explained that she wanted to adjust his perspective to improve the drawing. When Junichi asked why she needed to sit in his chair, Kaoru teased him, asking if it wasn't allowed. Flustered, Junichi couldn't object, and Kaoru told him to relax. However, while Kaoru stayed carefree, Junichi became increasingly nervous because she was sitting right in front of him. Kaoru studied the drawing briefly, and when Junichi asked if it could still be fixed, she assured him she'd give it a try. With enthusiasm, Kaoru began sketching on his paper. However, her constant movements made the situation awkward for Junichi. Her body swayed as she worked, causing her hips to unintentionally brush against him. Kaoru laughed, fully absorbed in her drawing, while Junichi tried his best to keep calm. But eventually, he couldn't take it and fell backward in his chair. To anyone passing by, the scene might have looked completely inappropriate. Exhausted, Junichi rested his head against the back of the chair behind him. When he opened his eyes, he saw Kiko standing there. Kiko yelled Kaoru's name, causing her to turn around and notice their entire class watching them. Embarrassed, Kiko called Junichi and Kaoru a pair of fools. She dragged Kaoru out of the classroom, telling her she couldn't believe they'd done something so inappropriate at school for everyone to see. Kaoru explained that the incident that morning was a misunderstanding and not what everyone thought. Unfortunately, everyone already knew that she and Junichi were dating. Kaoru asked Kiko if she and Junichi really looked like a foolish couple earlier, and Kiko nodded. Embarrassed, Kaoru covered her face. Kiko observed that despite dating for over half a year, Kaoru and Junichi still behaved like close friends. Kaoru admitted that neither she nor Junichi wanted things to change between them. Kiko advised her that moments like what happened that morning should probably be reserved for when they were alone. Kaoru agreed and began reflecting on all the things she had done with Junichi while they were alone, walking to school together, Junichi visiting her during her part-time job at the restaurant, and even playing billiards together. According to Kiko, none of it seemed any different from when they weren't dating. Kiko then reminded Kaoru that summer vacation was coming up and suggested that she and Junichi should go on a trip together. She pointed out that this would be their last summer vacation in high school. Kaoru found the idea appealing and agreed with Keiko's suggestion. During their break, Kaoru told Junichi about her desire to go on a trip together. She explained that it was their last summer vacation in high school and asked if he didn't want to make some memories from their teenage years. Curious, she asked where Junichi would like to go. Junichi's mind began to wander as he imagined them going to the beach so he could see Kaoru in a bikini, staying in a villa where he could see her in a yukata, or even relaxing in a hot spring and seeing her completely unclothed. Lost in his daydream, he was startled back to reality by Kaoru yelling his name. Panicked, Junichi blurted out that he didn't mind whether Kaoru was in a bikini, a yukata, or even nothing at all. Kaoru, confused, asked what Junichi was talking about. Embarrassed, Junichi laughed it off and admitted that he didn't have any money for a trip. Kaoru suggested he take a part-time job, work hard, and save up for their trip. She even handed him a flyer for a part-time job as a staff member for an Inago Mask Hero show. Junichi hesitated, explaining that he'd never worked a part-time job before and wasn't sure he could handle it. Kaoru encouraged him, promising to help. At the Inago Mask show, Kaoru took her role as the MC seriously, leading the audience in cheering for Inago Mask. She encouraged them to yell, "Inago Mask, you can do it," and the crowd quickly caught on. Junichi, watching from backstage, was nervous but determined. The audience grew excited and couldn't wait for the performance to begin. Among them were Ai, Ikuo, and Sei, who had come to watch the show. The performance kicked off and Junichi got ready, donning his villain costume. After a dramatic scene where Kaoru was tied up and sprayed with water, it was time for the squid monster to make an appearance. However, Kaoru noticed that this part wasn't in the script. The squid monster, played by Junichi, angrily wrapped its tentacles around Kaoru's arms and legs, holding her tightly. Strangely, the audience began cheering for the squid monster instead of Inago Mask. The squid monster dramatically asked Kaoru if she would surrender to its true power. Suddenly, someone in the audience shouted, questioning why the squid monster and the MC were getting more attention than Inago Mask himself. After the performance, Junichi and Kaoru were scolded by their boss for ruining the show. As punishment, they were only paid half of their earnings. Frustrated, Kaoru complained about how little they were paid after working so hard. The other staff members were equally annoyed with them and told them not to come back. Kaoru asked Junichi why he ignored the script. Junichi argued that Kaoru was just as much at fault as he was. He added that he didn't like how Kaoru kept siding with Inago Mask. Hearing this, Kaoru laughed and teased Junichi, calling him hopeless. On their way home, Junichi lamented that his dream of staying in a mountain villa or a beach inn had fallen through. Kaoru, ever the optimist, reassured him that they would find another job and do whatever it took to make their summer vacation trip happen. Suddenly, Kaoru ran off to grab a can of limited edition soda from a vending machine. She took a sip and was delighted by how good it tasted. She offered the drink to Junichi, but he initially refused. Kaoru insisted, saying that if she recommended it, it must be delicious. Reluctantly, Junichi gave in and took a sip. He admitted it was indeed delicious and proceeded to drink more, much to Kaoru's dismay. "Don't finish it all," she protested. Unfortunately, Junichi drained the can. Kaoru, annoyed, reminded him that it was the last one of its kind. Laughing, Junichi apologized. While tossing the empty can in the trash, Kaoru noticed a brochure and excitedly showed it to Junichi. It was for a cheap sightseeing bus tour, with prices so low that they could afford to leave as early as the next day. Overjoyed, Kaoru declared their trip was back on. Later, Junichi shared the news with Masayoshi, mentioning his upcoming trip. Masayoshi, clearly envious, sighed about being stuck at the sushi restaurant during summer, while Junichi got to go on a trip with his girlfriend. Junichi tried to downplay it, explaining it was just an overnight sightseeing bus tour. Masayoshi, however, declared that when you're in a relationship, money doesn't matter. He shared that his summer would consist of making sushi and setting off fireworks alone by the river. Then, with a sly grin, he asked Junichi if he had brought any adult videotapes. Blushing, Junichi reluctantly handed one over. Grinning, Masayoshi praised Junichi for being a lifesaver. He then encouraged Junichi to train to become a true man over the summer. Confused, Junichi asked what exactly he meant by train. Meanwhile, Kaoru was on the phone with Kiko, sharing her excitement about the 3-day, 2-night sightseeing bus tour with Junichi. Kiko was stunned by the idea of Kaoru spending the night with Junichi. Although Keiko had suggested a trip, she had only meant a one-day outing. Laughing, Kaoru reassured her that they'd be sleeping on the bus, not in a hotel. Relieved, Keiko encouraged Kaoru to enjoy herself and promised to cheer her on. Kaoru, puzzled, wondered what exactly Keiko meant by cheer her on. That night, Kaoru prepared snacks for the trip. As she packed, she found herself daydreaming about spending the entire day with Junichi. Shaking her head to clear her thoughts, she scolded herself for overthinking. Excitement coursed through her as she realized their journey was about to begin. The next day, Kaoru and Junichi headed to the bus terminal. As they waited at a crosswalk, Kaoru smiled to herself, prompting Junichi to ask if something was wrong. "Nothing at all," she replied cheerfully. Junichi grinned and said he couldn't wait for the trip to start. When the light turned green, Kaoru suddenly sprinted forward, challenging Junichi to a race to the bus stop. Laughing, Junichi chased after her but called out that she was running toward the wrong bus. Kaoru stopped abruptly, realizing she had been tricked, and Junichi seized the chance to dash ahead of her. Annoyed, Kaoru shouted at him, but she couldn't resist getting caught up in the playful competition. She yelled back, asking what kind of punishment the loser would face. Once on the bus, Kaoru opened her bag to reveal the snacks she had prepared. She proudly showed Junichi the assortment of limited edition treats she had brought along. She picked up one and playfully offered to feed it to him. As Junichi eagerly opened his mouth, Kaoru mischievously popped the snack into her own mouth instead. Laughing, she teased Junichi for falling for her trick. Junichi, slightly embarrassed but amused, asked her to keep it down. Watching her laugh, he couldn't help but smile softly. Their trip had just begun, and it was already shaping up to be memorable. Kaoru asked Junichi if there was any particular place he wanted to visit during their trip, but Junichi replied that there wasn't. Kaoru playfully called him boring, pointing out that they were on an exciting journey. Junichi shrugged and said he didn't mind going anywhere, as long as it was a place Kaoru wanted to visit. Junichi then brought up the punishment Kaoru owed him for losing the earlier race. He grabbed his snack and gave her an unusual challenge. She was to eat only the chocolate layer while leaving the biscuit part in his mouth. He also insisted she not let her lips touch his. Kaoru raised an eyebrow and asked why she had to do something so ridiculous, but Junichi teased her for not having the courage. Determined not to back down, Kaoru agreed. The two attempted the strange task, but their noises drew attention from the other passengers. Even someone who had been asleep woke up to see what was happening. By the time they managed to separate the chocolate from the biscuit, they realized everyone was staring at them. Embarrassed, both Kaoru and Junichi blushed deeply as the passengers quickly turned their gazes elsewhere. The bus made a stop at a gas station for a 20-minute break. Relieved to stretch their legs after sitting for so long, Kaoru and Junichi stepped out of the bus. Kaoru reminded Junichi that since they were on a budget sightseeing bus, they couldn't complain or be greedy. Junichi smiled and said he didn't mind because he was happy to be with her. Kaoru laughed, touched by his sweet comment. At the snack shop, Junichi asked Kaoru if she really needed to buy more snacks, given how much she already had with her. Kaoru, however, insisted she couldn't pass up the opportunity to try limited edition snacks she couldn't find elsewhere. Despite having told Junichi earlier not to be greedy, she claimed this was different. "It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity," she declared confidently. Kaoru's shopping haul was massive, and Junichi couldn't help but point out that she was overdoing it. Kaoru explained that some were souvenirs, but most were for herself. Back on the bus, she packed her purchases into her seat, which ended up completely covered in snacks. Feeling a bit embarrassed, she returned to Junichi, who reminded her not to buy anything else. Junichi also joked about whether the other passengers would laugh at the sheer amount of snacks Kaoru was bringing home, but Kaoru assured him she had camouflaged them well. Junichi, confused, asked what she meant, but Kaoru quickly changed the subject and pulled him toward another shop. They arrived at a small restaurant that specialized in eel dishes and tea. Kaoru was eager to try it, and while Junichi found her appetite endless, he wasn't surprised by her enthusiasm. Kaoru argued that the dish was famous and that she couldn't miss this chance. Junichi reluctantly agreed but reminded her they had to return to the bus soon. Kaoru reassured him they still had time and dragged him into the restaurant. As their break ended, the bus driver did a head count. Kaoru's seat, piled high with snacks and covered with a blanket, gave the illusion that she and Junichi were sleeping. Assuming all passengers were accounted for, the bus left. Meanwhile, Junichi and Kaoru were still enjoying their meal, with Junichi particularly satisfied with the eel dish. Kaoru felt lucky he had decided to try it. They eventually returned to the parking area, only to discover the bus was gone. Panic set in as they realized they had been left behind. Searching the area, they checked a few other buses, but none matched the color or type of their original bus. It finally dawned on them that they had missed the ride. Back on the bus, Kaoru's friend Kiko wondered whether Kaoru was having a great time on her trip. Little did she know Kaoru and Junichi were in trouble. With all their belongings still on the bus, Junichi rushed to a nearby payphone to contact the travel agency, but it was after business hours. Frustrated, he tried calling his sister Mia, who answered briefly before falling back asleep. When Kaoru asked if there had been any progress, Junichi shook his head. He sighed and asked, "So it's just the two of us now?" Kaoru, equally frustrated and confused, nodded, unsure of what to do next. Kaoru and Junichi embarked on a bus tour during their summer vacation, but perhaps fate decided to punish them for having too much fun. They were left behind at a rest stop. Junichi sighed, commenting that they shouldn't have eaten the grilled eel and tea earlier. Kaoru took offense, snapping back that Junichi shouldn't blame her considering he had eaten it too. She told him to stop pointing fingers, though Junichi clarified that wasn't his intention. Their argument grew heated until a loud truck horn interrupted them. A box truck pulled up and parked right in front of them. Both of their faces lit up with hope. This might be their chance to get out of this predicament. They politely asked the driver if they could hitch a ride. Feeling sorry for their unlucky situation, the driver agreed. As they got into the truck, Kaoru grumbled about how they never expected to be left behind. Junichi teased her, saying she's too easily tempted by specialty goods and local foods. Kaoru, already annoyed, retorted that Junichi had enjoyed eating earlier just as much as she had. Their bickering continued as Junichi blamed Kaoru for misjudging the time, to which Kaoru countered that if he knew she was wrong, he should have said something. Junichi reasoned that she looked eager to try the food, so he didn't want to stop her. Kaoru, fed up, told him to stop blaming her, but Junichi explained that wasn't his intention. She pointed out that his tone made it sound like he was blaming her. The driver, amused but exasperated, asked them to quit arguing, chuckling as he called them a perfect couple. Junichi was confused by the comment, prompting the driver to explain the old saying, "The more you fight, the more you love." He then informed them that he would drop them off at the nearest station. Feeling sheepish, they both apologized. The driver also mentioned that there was a nearby inn with hot springs, adding that it was likely an outdoor natural hot spring, a truly cozy spot in the countryside. Hearing this, Junichi's imagination ran wild, picturing himself with Kaoru in the hot spring, completely naked. He couldn't contain himself and shouted in excitement, startling the driver and causing him to momentarily lose control of the truck. Junichi burst into laughter, clearly thrilled, leaving Kaoru confused. She asked what was going on, but he brushed it off, saying it was nothing. The driver, thinking Junichi's enthusiasm was for his suggestion, remarked that Junichi was lucky to be traveling with his girlfriend. He went on to share his philosophy. Love often blossoms during shared journeys. The sense of peace and support from a travel companion, especially one who walks alongside you through life, is invaluable. Junichi and Kaoru smiled at his words. When they finally arrived at their destination, they thanked the driver profusely for giving them a ride. The driver reminded them not to fight anymore and drove off. Kaoru and Junichi agreed that the driver was a kind person. Excited, they turned to see the inn and hot springs he mentioned. Standing before them was the gate to Roryujin Hot Springs. However, the place gave off an eerie vibe. The two hesitated but decided to walk through the gate. The area was eerily quiet and Junichi urged Kaoru to follow him inside. She remained frozen, unsure. When Junichi turned to ask if she was scared, Kaoru denied it and marched ahead to prove her courage. When Kaoru stepped on a branch, she reflexively hugged Junichi in fear. Junichi laughed, amused by how scared she looked. He teased her, noting how she could ride all the extreme attractions at an amusement park, but was scared of something like this. Kaoru denied being frightened, insisting that she was only pretending to be startled. Suddenly, an elderly woman appeared and greeted them, causing both of them to jump back in surprise. The woman invited them to enjoy the natural hot spring there. She mentioned that they were the only visitors, so they could relax and enjoy it as much as they wanted. After that, the woman left. Kaoru whispered to Junichi that the place felt a bit creepy, and Junichi agreed. Standing up, he announced he needed to use the restroom. Kaoru shouted after him, insisting she would come along. Junichi chuckled, asking if Kaoru was scared to be left alone. Kaoru stubbornly denied it, claiming she was simply being kind by accompanying him. Junichi shrugged and accepted her excuse. They walked down a corridor in search of the restroom. Junichi guessed it was in one direction, but Kaoru thought it was somewhere else. Sticking close behind him, Kaoru held onto Junichi's shoulders. Junichi glanced back and asked why she was clinging to him. Embarrassed, Kaoru quickly let go. Suddenly, they heard a sound. Kaoru panicked and urged Junichi to check it out. He told her to stay put while he investigated, but Kaoru refused to be left behind and clung to him again. Following the noise, they peeked through a door and saw the silhouette of the elderly woman chopping something with a knife. Horrified, they screamed. The woman emerged, holding the knife, and asked if something was wrong. To their surprise, they realized she was only chopping salmon for dinner. Embarrassed, they noticed they were hugging each other out of fear and quickly pulled away. The woman reassured them she was just preparing their meal and suggested they take a bath first. Grateful, they smiled and followed her instructions. They headed to separate baths since the men's and women's areas were divided. Kaoru called out, asking Junichi to wait for her if she needed to go to the restroom later. Junichi teased her for being scared again, and Kaoru shouted back that she wasn't afraid. Junichi found the bath incredibly relaxing. Suddenly, Kaoru screamed, prompting him to rush over to check on her. Kaoru pointed out that something was near the bath. In his panic, Junichi failed to notice he wasn't wearing a towel. Kaoru screamed, calling him a pervert, and threw a bucket at him, ordering him to leave. However, as he started to go, Kaoru called out, asking him to stay. She reluctantly told him to soak in the corner while keeping his back turned. As they both soaked in the bath, Kaoru eventually called Junichi over. Before he could respond, they spotted a monkey holding Kaoru's bra. Kaoru screamed, standing up in anger and demanding the monkey return her bra. The startled monkey ran off, leaving Junichi red-faced as he accidentally caught sight of Kaoru standing completely nude. Embarrassed, Kaoru called Junichi an idiot and smacked him. After the bath, they walked down the corridor. Kaoru grumbled about her misfortune, lamenting that the breast stolen by the monkey was her favorite. When they entered the dining area, they were awestruck to see a lavish meal spread out before them. The elderly woman invited them to enjoy her cooking. Kaoru was delighted, especially since the food was delicious. Junichi noticed how quickly her mood had improved. He mused to himself how good food could instantly cheer Kaoru up. Kaoru ate so much that she became sleepy. When they opened the door to their room, they were surprised to find the beds placed side by side. Feeling awkward, they pushed the beds slightly apart. Kaoru then asked Junichi why it was so hard for her to define their relationship. She admitted it was difficult to figure out the boundary between being friends and being a couple. She had hoped this trip would help clarify things, but instead, everything had turned out like this. Unfortunately for Kaoru, Junichi had already fallen asleep. Smiling softly, she whispered "good night" and drifted off as well. The next day, when it was time to pay, Junichi realized he had lost his wallet. Kaoru offered to cover the cost of the accommodation. The elderly hotel keeper thanked them and invited them to visit again sometime. Kaoru asked about Junichi's wallet, and he explained that he had left it at the payphone. He had been in such a panic earlier that he forgot to grab his wallet when he left. Kaoru mentioned that she almost had nothing left after paying for the room. Junichi apologized to her, feeling bad. Kaoru was irritated and told him that if she had known it would end up like this, she would have preferred walking all the way to the station and taking the last train the night before. Junichi said that he hadn't meant to forget his wallet, so there was nothing he could do now. He also pointed out that Kaoru was partially to blame for spending too much on snacks. Kaoru shot back that she didn't spend too much. She had only bought some special items. Junichi, annoyed, complained about Kaoru's constant excuse of once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. Kaoru, equally annoyed, couldn't stand Junichi's teasing. They continued walking, but soon found themselves at a split in the road. Junichi asked which way they had come from before, but Kaoru remained silent and immediately chose the left path. Junichi asked, just to be sure, why she had picked that route. Kaoru replied that she was just going with her instincts. Junichi asked her what would happen if her instincts were wrong. Kaoru, frustrated, told him he was free to take the other path if he wanted to. Junichi was annoyed but didn't want to leave Kaoru to walk alone, so he followed her. Suddenly, Kaoru stopped, noticing how quiet the path ahead was. Junichi remarked that this might have been the wrong way. Kaoru didn't answer and continued walking. Junichi told her to wait for him, but as he tried to catch up, he slipped. Kaoru quickly ran over to him, asking how he was. Junichi assured her he was fine. Soon after, it started to rain, and they rushed to find shelter. They took refuge at a bus stop. Junichi was relieved to have found the bus stop in time. Kaoru, exhausted and soaked from the rain, stood there with her clothes drenched. Junichi couldn't help but notice that her shirt had become see-through from the rain. That's when he realized Kaoru wasn't wearing a bra since the monkey had taken it the night before at the inn. Junichi found himself looking at Kaoru's chest again, but when he turned to face her, he was caught by her glare. Kaoru, noticing his gaze, asked why he kept staring at her. Junichi awkwardly glanced down at her chest and pointed it out. Kaoru blushed in embarrassment, clearly startled. Junichi quickly tried to explain that he hadn't meant to look. It just happened that her chest was visible because of the rain. Kaoru, now embarrassed and angry, slapped his face hard. Junichi winced in pain and remarked that it felt like this had happened before. Kaoru, curious, asked if Junichi had ever done something to deserve being slapped by a woman. Junichi quickly denied it, saying he hadn't done anything. Kaoru noticed the red handprint on Junichi's cheek and started to laugh. Seeing the mark, Junichi was shocked by how hard her slap had been. Kaoru laughed and apologized for hitting him. Meanwhile, the rain was coming down heavily, and Junichi admitted that Kaoru was right. Thanks to her instincts, they had found the bus stop. Kaoru smiled and apologized as well, admitting that she had been harsh and blamed Junichi too much. Junichi, realizing his mistake and losing his wallet, also thought about how Kaoru had insisted on trying the eel and tea, which had added to their expenses. Kaoru also realized that she had spent too much money on special edition food items. They both came to understand their mistakes and apologized to each other. Junichi suggested that they just enjoy the rest of their trip and let the rain wash away everything that had happened. Kaoru called him a real poet. Not long after, the sky cleared up and the rain stopped. Suddenly, someone on a bike approached them and informed them that the bus stop was no longer in service, so no buses would be coming. They were both surprised and realized they would have to walk all the way back to the payphone. It was Kaoru and Junichi's last bit of money, and they used it to make a call to Mia. However, before Junichi could say anything, Mia kept talking. She mentioned that someone from the travel agency had called her earlier that morning, apologizing and saying they would hold on to Junichi's things. Mia asked if there was anything else he had left behind and said she would pay for it when she brought it over to his house. She reassured him that she was being kind to him and told him not to worry. Mia also asked where Junichi was at the moment. Before Junichi could explain, the payphone cut off because they ran out of coins and everything was in vain. Kaoru and Junichi walked to the beach and sat down looking out at the ocean. Junichi suggested that it might be better for them to just go to the police station. Kaoru agreed with him. Kaoru stood up and suggested they play for a little while. She ran toward the beach and started playing in the water. She called out for Junichi to join her. Junichi went over to her, and they happily played in the water together until they were exhausted. Through everything they had experienced together, Kaoru realized how much she truly enjoyed being with Junichi, and Junichi felt the same way. Kaoru asked Junichi to continue guiding her forward. They held hands and kissed. Suddenly, they heard Masayoshi's voice calling out to them. Junichi was surprised to see Masayoshi there and recalled their conversation before leaving for the trip. Masayoshi asked if Junichi was doing well in his role as a man, and Junichi replied that it had been amazing. Masayoshi said he was jealous of Junichi and that he would work even harder. Junichi felt grateful that they had made it through safely, and it felt like they had been saved by Buddha from the depths of hell. And so Kaoru and Junichi's journey came to an end, and their final summer vacation during high school turned out to be an unforgettable experience. The next day, Kaoru greeted Kiko in class. Kiko mentioned that Junichi still hadn't arrived, but it turned out Kaoru just wanted to meet Kiko. Kiko assumed Kaoru wanted to tell her more about the trip, but she didn't want to hear it again since Kaoru had already told her about it over the phone. However, Kaoru only wanted to thank Kiko in person for suggesting that she go on the trip. Thanks to that advice, Kaoru was able to create such wonderful memories. Just then, Junichi and Masayoshi entered the classroom and greeted them. Kaoru handed Junichi the drawing she had finished, and he immediately thanked her before opening it. Junichi, Kiko, and Masayoshi were all amazed by how realistic Kaoru's drawing was. It showed a couple watching the sunset on the beach, and it looked just like something out of a dream. Keiko and Masayoshi both felt a bit envious. Junichi thanked Kaoru, but Kaoru realized she had forgotten to draw the background details. She quickly sat down at Junichi's desk, planning to fix the drawing. Junichi felt a little awkward and nervous because Kaoru was sitting so close to him, but Kaoru reassured him to stay calm, saying that this was just how they always were with each other.